I've got it at, it's 6:34 on December, 6:34 in the evening, December 9th. We'll call the Conservation Commission meeting to order. Roll call. I see in attendance Linda Andros and our good friend Marty McLaughlin and myself, which gives us quorum to start the meeting. And then as additional participants, I see Claire Bloom online, Sarah Crosby, Robin Bates Mason, Kira T. I don't know what Kira T's last name is.
Science team.
Sorry, somebody said something?
No,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
I'll wait for, if Susan doesn't come back, we won't be able to approve the minutes. Oh, no, actually, Marty and I can approve the minutes.
Well,
Don't we have-
you keep breaking up as far as I can see, and then I don't hear everything, and then it comes and goes. Is everybody experiencing that?
No, I'm getting him loud and clear.
Hmm. All right.
All right, let's,
I don't know if we can approve the minutes because I would have to abstain since I wasn't at the meeting.
all right, we'll table minutes and we'll
Yeah.
move to the first point on the agenda. And I think this is just, I don't know whether is prepared to say anything on sustainability of the pollinator pathway.
Sorry, so the pollinator pathway resolution, we're still, there were concerns from some members after the changes. So I put forth 3 different proposals to some of the group, and I'll send it to the rest of the group. And hopefully we'll have something for next meeting.
Okay, then we'll table that discussion and go on to the next topic, which will be the river testing results. And we welcome Claire Bloom, the New High School Science team, and Sarah Crosby to continue just to start this discussion.
So yes, Sarah is going to begin. We talked before. Sarah, is this your 3rd year presenting this? Sarah? Sarah?
I can't.
Oh, the joys of Zoom.
Can anybody else hear me, or is it just Linda that can't hear me? Oh, everybody! It looks like everybody else can hear me. Okay, we're good. Sorry. Yes, I think it is the third year. So I will. I'm going to share our the Harbor Watch data for the rivers that we've been monitoring this past year. Thank you to the Conservation Commission. And I see that Tiger is here. Thank you to Tiger as well for assistance with maps and things like that, which was very helpful. So I'll present that data, and then Clara and Kira and Ty will present the data that they collected in Bristow. So we'll have, I'll try to be quick so that we can get on to theirs, but I'm going to share my screen. Are you guys seeing my slides okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, cool.
I can
All
see
right.
it.
Perfect. And I'm happy to send these after if that would be helpful for anybody.
Absolutely.
So
We-
just to start off, and feel free to interrupt if anyone has questions as we're going. So just to start off, we are, in case anybody's not familiar with Harbor Watch, we're a water quality research and education program. We work throughout Fairfield County, but we're based in Westport. And one important thing about the water quality data that I'll be talking about is that our focus is on bacteria. And in particular, we do water quality monitoring for indicator bacteria that indicate that sewage pollution might be present. And the freshwater indicator that we use for that, for all the sites in New Canaan, is E. coli. And the data that we're collecting in our river monitoring can inform where pollution track down activities or mitigation efforts may be needed. And so we're basically collecting this baseline data that can then be used by towns to hopefully look for potential sources. And this is different from the kind of data that Clara and her colleagues will be sharing in a little while, which is more focused on nutrients. And so there are different types of monitoring data. And so just to start big picture a little bit, we tested 14 rivers in 16 towns this year. And so I'll be sharing the data that we collected specifically in New Canaan. But we had 133 different sites that were each sampled 8 to 10 times each between May and September. And I'm providing this information mostly to help put the New Canaan data in context. So across all of the rivers that we studied this past year and all of the sites, 69% of those sites exceeded one or more of the Connecticut criteria for acceptable bacteria levels. And so that's obviously, we would like for that number to approach 0. And so it's an opportunity-rich environment, as always, for improvement. The best river in terms of bacteria concentrations that we monitored this year in Fairfield County is the Little River, which is up in Newtown, I want to say. I can picture all the sites, but I'm terrible. My geography is terrible, so forgive me. And the sort of worst sites that we studied, the worst rivers that we studied this year would be Bruce Brook, which is in Bridgeport and Stratford, Horseneck Brook, which is in Greenwich, Saska Brook, which is in Westport and Fairfield, and the Ash Creek watershed, which is mostly in Bridgeport and Fairfield, I believe. May go further north than that. So those are overall sort of the rivers that we were looking at. And I wanted to start by just sort of sharing sort of how New Canaan stacked up relative to some of the other places that we studied. So we had 14 testing sites on the 5 Mile River, Woroton River, and Rippewam River. And in this table, you can see each town, the number of sites we studied in that town, and then the percentage of those sites that were failing one or both of the bacteria concentration allowance criteria for deep. And so as you can see, New Canaan fell sort of in the middle of the pack. So not one of the worst ones, but a little bit higher in some instances than some of the other towns. But we also had a ton of sites in New Canaan. So as you all know, and you'll see in the map, so we have a bunch of waterways that start actually in sort of different coastal towns, but then all sort of converge up in New Canaan. So you have a wealth of rivers to study in your town. And so I want to share the two different types of bacteria data that we look at, the two different types of criteria that we use to assess our bacteria data. And so this is a map showing the study sites in New Canaan specifically. And so you can see the 3 different rivers there, and then the different colors of the dots shown indicates the geomean for E. coli at each of those sites during the monitoring period. And so what a geomean is essentially an average, but that reduces the weight of outliers. And so it's a better way to look at these types of data. And what we're looking for here is for the geomean to be less than 126. That is the state criteria for these types of waterways. And as you can see, we don't have any sites here that are in the red or the orange zone, but we do have a good number of sites that are sort of in the yellow. And so those are sites that we want to be keeping an eye on and exploring whether there's something going on there. And so I wanted to walk through.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can I ask, you don't do the Silver Mine River?
So we have in the past, we did not do the Silver Mine River this year. And part of the reason that we didn't is the last couple of times that we've studied the Silver Mine River, it's actually looked great. And so we often try to focus on waterways where we think there's an opportunity for improvement, or for example, in the case of the 5 Mile River, which I'm showing now, if there are some that had been looking pretty good, but that we hadn't studied in a while, we'll try to circle back periodically and make sure that everything's still looking okay. There are over 200 different waterways in Fairfield County, and so we can't do them all at once. So we do try to just be strategic about how we're choosing the places where we work. So we have past data on the silver mine. So if that's something that's of interest, I'm happy to share that, but nothing from 2021.
Thank you.
Sure. So this is just a table showing the column on the right, the geometric mean for each site for 2021. And in the column to the left of that, the last time that we studied the 5 Mile River, which was 2017. And so just the takeaway here is really that we're not seeing major changes at any of these sites. There are a few that got a little worse, a few that got a little better. And as you can see, most of the sites, even the ones in New Canaan, which I believe is 6 and up or 7 and up, even the ones that are failing aren't failing by all that much. And so there are definitely a few in here that we're taking a look at, and I'll show those in a moment. But just to give a sense of sort of the magnitude of the concentrations that we're seeing in the data. Then looking at the Woroton River, so here I'm showing a graph where you have the average geomean across all of the sites shown in the black bars by year. And then the striped bars are the saltwater sites. So those are the sites sort of down in Stanford and Darien. And then the rainfall is shown as that gray line. And so to the right-hand side of this graph, you can see that compared to 2020, the geometric mean average is pretty similar. So we're not seeing, a negative trend, and pretty similar over the past 3 years, in fact. And there also hasn't been much difference in the rainfall over those past 3 years. And so we're not seeing any major changes there that we're concerned about. Looking at the Rippewam River, the black bars are the freshwater sites. So that includes sites both in New Canaan and down in Stanford. And then the saltwater sites are shown as the striped bars. And so we are seeing a slightly higher average in 2021 versus 2020, but a lot of that is being driven by sites that are not actually in New Canaan. And so looking at the river as a whole, there may be some work to be done down in Stanford, but we're not seeing a meaningful contribution from the New Canaan sites. The other criteria that we use to assess whether there might be a sewage pollution source present is not just looking at the average, but looking at when things at that site get elevated. How elevated are they? And so we're looking for instances where the bacteria concentration is greater than 576. And we're looking for how often that happens. And so when you look at the data against that criterion, you can see that there's fewer sites that fall into that yellow, orange, or red. Whereas if you remember when we're looking at the geomeans, it was more of a mix of yellows. So there are 4 sites that jump out at us when we're looking at this single sample maximum criteria. And as you can see, we do have 2 sites in New Canaan that are into the orange. And so these are the sites that we're going to be focusing on and reaching out to Public Works to potentially do some pollution trackdown work in the future. And just to start off, in case people wanted to see sort of where these sites are, and forgive my side of the road photos, but this is how we view these sites in our minds. It's oh, the one with the bridge, because we're the ones hanging over the side of the bridge to collect the samples usually. So 5 Mile 7 is a site where we are seeing some elevated concentrations. And I did want to note that we initiated some pollution trackdown work at the suggestion of the folks at DPW who had an outfall that they wanted us to investigate just upstream of that. And so we did share some data with Tiger's team from that. And so we'll be following up with them in January. Tiger, you'll be getting an email from me to follow up on that. to see what the status is of that outfall and if there's any additional data that they need from us to move forward. Similarly, we're going to be looking at this site 5 Mile 8, which is on Smith Ridge Road, 5 Mile 10, which is on, looks like Michigan Road, and then also site Rippewam 9, which is on Cascade Road. And so you can see actually that the last two sites, the last two sites are a little bit more undisturbed looking, so a little bit more open space. And so we don't have any sort of obvious sources immediately there. And so we'll definitely be working with Tiger on looking at GIS maps and trying to determine where additional sampling might be needed. But I did want to put all of that information in context. And so I wanted to show that single sample maximum map for all of Fairfield County. And so as you can see, there are those 4 sites in New Canaan that we definitely want to do some additional investigation at. And so we'll be reaching out to DPW about that. But in comparison, you can see that there are a lot of towns and a lot of waterways that have far more significant pollution problems. As you can see, the clusters of red to the far right are the Ash Creek watershed and Bruce Brook. And it looks like all but one of the sites on those waterways, between 60 and 100% of the samples were higher than that 576 threshold. And so even though we do see a decent number of sites that are failing that criteria in New Canaan, it's definitely in better shape than a lot of the other places where we're working. And so I'm eager to work with Tiger going forward to try to make any improvements that we can. But I also did want to just make sure to put that in context. So in terms of next steps, so I'll be sharing our data in our year-end report, which is done. We released it yesterday, and it is now available for download on our website, which is harborwatch.org. I'm happy to send, it's a big PDF, and so I'm happy to share it by email with anybody who's interested as well, but it's available now on our website. I sent that report to Tiger by email earlier this week. We always try to give our DPW partners a sneak preview in case they want to review it before it goes public, in case anybody has any questions. And then I'm hoping to meet with DPW in January to discuss track down priorities and if there's any data that they need that we could help provide, and then continue monitoring in 2022. And again, we share all of the data with Connecticut Deep so that they can continue to assess the health of all of these waterways. And so with that, I also wanted to just say thank you for your support and your partnership, not just on this, but just in case I don't get to chime in at the end of the next one, but also the work with the New Canaan High School science team, who have been an absolute delight to work with and who seem far more well-versed in science than they certainly have any right to be for only being in high school. I've been very impressed by the science team. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Conservation Commission, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Sarah, this is Chris Shipper.
Sure. Hi.
Thank you so much for following up on the testing again and sharing the information. I think in prior reports, we also looked at oxygenation levels. Did we not test for that this time, or is that just, I don't need to go through it, I just wondered.
Yes, no, we do have that. I wasn't, the agenda looked quite full, and so I didn't include all of that here, but it is in the report. And
Okay.
Definitely feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
And if Tiger is on, I'd like him to just speak to the 5 Mile River sites and gain his perspective.
Oh, I am. Thank you, Sarah. I did look at the report prior, so I appreciate and then I sent it to my town engineer and then our inland wetlands director for their input. And I do plan on sending it to our health director and our wastewater treatment plant operator. The health director obviously right now is a little swamped with other things. I don't really want to overload her, so I didn't want to send it to her and then have it sit on the side. I wanted to actually be able to talk to her about it, especially since, some of that stuff I think, might be mitigatable from her end, because it's really in the upper regions of some of the reaches, which I didn't like. I didn't like that we started changing color, to be perfectly honest with you. And I noted a couple of those places. And the specific ones that you got around our plan, I want to talk to our director about as well. I know that we meet permit every single time, we've never had a problem, but I still want to say, hey, Jim, what's going on in those areas? So in January, I'm going to try to get each one of those stakeholders well into the meeting with us. So we can try to do a little comprehensive look. I know we asked you to look at a couple of things that we had concerns over.
Yep.
I appreciate you doing that. And then we'll be looking at, re-upping our MS4 permit soon. So that'll be helpful for us.
And if you need any of these data in Excel or a different format to include, I know that some towns that we work with include the raw data in the MS4 reporting. So if you want any of this in a different format than the report itself, definitely let me know. We're happy to share, everything that we have. So just keep me posted on what would be most useful for you guys.
That's a good idea. I'll send it to our consultant Ty and Bond as well, so that they're aware. I'm sure they're going to get a copy anyways, but I'll see what their needs might be on our, for our annual report as well.
Great.
But it was excellent overall. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. Sarah, I have another question, which is, if you're seeing a high bacterial level upstream, but then further downstream, you no longer see it, is there a natural dissipation cycle that occurs through sunlight or oxygen so that the bacterial level is actually dropping from a high point to a low point as it moves down, 500 yards?
Yeah, so I'll give you the 30-second answer, but I could give you a 3-hour answer. There's a lot that goes into, but it's so the net of it is, so we're using E. coli as an indicator, and there's a lot of things in the environment that are going to reduce the survival of E. coli. So sunlight, temperature, just settling out and getting sort of trapped in the sediments. And so the reality is that there may be some amount of either dilution or, the bacteria don't survive where you're not seeing the E. coli anymore. But if there's a sewage pollution source, that doesn't mean that other pathogens aren't still present in the water. And so we're using this to try to assess across space, do we have a problem? Where is our problem occurring? But just, if there's a really high count and then you get a few sites downstream and it's not so high anymore, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't something coming downstream that you don't want coming downstream. It's more the limitation of the indicator that we're using to assess the quality of the water. And so that's also part of the reason why we don't do a lot of work in the winter, because E. coli can become undetectable when the water is really cold. And so even if there is a pollution source, you might not see it in the data. And so when the weather gets really cold, it's not a very good indicator to use. And so it's a combination of dilution, and bacteria doesn't do very well with direct sunlight, and then other sort of factors in the environment.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, then I guess I'd be delighted to hand it off to the science team, who have a far more beautiful PowerPoint than, I've managed to end up back in my own presentation somehow, but a far more beautiful PowerPoint than I do, and I'm excited to hear their results.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'll just share my screen. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Clara Bloom. I'm here with Ty and Kira. The three of us are all leaders of the New Canaan High School science team. And today we'll be presenting and talking to you about our data and research in our water testing project in the Bristow Bird Sanctuary. So the goal of this project was to assess the water quality of the Woroton River watershed by looking at nutrients at the Bristow Bird Sanctuary. From June to October of this year, we went on 6 different sampling days, 3 dry weather and 3 wet weather. And on each day, we collected samples and tested the water for temperature, dissolved oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, nitrates, and ammonia nitrogen. So we had a lot of help from HARWatch. So a big thank you to HARWatch, including Sarah Crosby, because they were very helpful in going out with us on all the days. And, they brought the equipment and taught us how to use it and really just taught us a lot about water quality research. So our data collection team consisted of science team members, and then the entire science team worked together to analyze the data, which we also got help from Harbor Watch and from our faculty advisor, Mrs. Zabulski. And when we collected the water samples at the different sites, we then sent them to the York Analytical Lab, which is where the testing was done for the nutrients, including like the nitrogen and the phosphorus. So here's a quick map of the different sites. We had 7 sites in and around the bird sanctuary. So you can see our first 2 are up very upstream of the sanctuary. So they're at 2 different bridges near the start of the Gold Star Walk. And then we kind of followed the river downstream to site 3, which is below the baseball fields. Then site 4 is within the bird sanctuary. It's at one of the bridges in the sanctuary. Site 5 is at that really pretty pond within the sanctuary. Then site 6 is downstream of the sanctuary. It's on at a culvert at Old Stamford Road. And then our final site, site 7, is a little ways farther down, even further downstream, near a large pond at Indian Waters Drive.
Great.
So now I'm going to pass it off. Oh, actually, no, this is my slide. Sorry, I'll keep talking. So, so one of the things that we tested was for the total nitrogen. So nitrogen is one of the nutrients where there isn't necessarily like a specific level that it's like really bad if the nitrogen goes above that level. So it's generally more important to look at just trends throughout the sites. But just for reference, I put this line at 0.857 milligrams per liter, which is the average to total nitrogen of the Norwalk River from different sampling days that are kind of similar to the ones that we sampled at. So just looking at this graph, there's kind of the thing that stands out most is this one really large spike on day 1 at Bristow 2. So that's one of the sites, one of the first 2 sites near the Gold Star Walk. So that one, it's pretty much a clear outlier. So that kind of suggests that there was some kind of one-day source that happened there that was some sort of source of nutrients. But perhaps more notably, we can look at site 6, which is most consistently above the levels of nitrogen of the other sources. So that site, it potentially has some source of nitrogen near that particular site, which is the one, if you remember, by the culvert. So that's off the side of the road, and it's kind of like this really small site near someone's house. So there's potentially some sorts of nitrogen going on at that site.
Sorry. So the next parameter we did was nitrate. So a high nitrate level typically is a result of using fertilizers in addition to things like bad drainage, waste, etc. So and high nitrate levels can typically lead to an overgrowth of algae and other aquatic plants. So generally speaking, a reading that is less than 1 milligram per liter is considered excellent. A reading that is 1 to 3 milligrams per liter is considered good, and one that's 3 to 5 is considered fair. So looking at our data, most of it's pretty good. There is a spike at site 2, and similar to what Clara said, I think that was kind of an anomaly or kind of an outlier because none of the other days none of the other sites have high levels on that day. Site 6 has typically high nitrate levels throughout the whole day, and we noticed that Site 6 has high levels of several parameters throughout the testing. All right, next is the next parameter is ammonia and nitrogen. So this should, we're pretty sure this should be as low as possible, since usually an excess of ammonia can be damaging to aquatic life, and it affects algae growth. And similar to other parameters, it can be caused by fertilizers and other factors. And the levels at these sites were typically low, mostly between 0 and 0.2 milligrams per liter. There was a spike on dry 1 and dry 2 at site 3, which is below the baseball fields, and the ammonia from there dissipated onto the next two sites, which you can see from the two bar graphs to the right.
All right, it looks like Kira's slides may have disappeared. I'm going to try to find them. Here's her dissolved oxygen. Sorry, Kira.
Yeah, no problem. If you want, you can like load it. I was just trying to kind of show the good range, but it's blocked out the actual data. So yeah, you can just like close and reshare. If you, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, my Zoom's being a little bit glitchy. It won't let me, okay. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so one of the things that we tested for directly that actually didn't come from the York Analytical Lab was the dissolved oxygen. And basically dissolved oxygen is just a measure of how much oxygen there is in the water so that fish and other aquatic life, they can use it to breathe. It increases because of algae, because algae is a plant, so when it photosynthesizes, it creates more oxygen in the water, which actually then gets released to the air. However, dead algae that is decomposing decreases the oxygen because the decomposers that eat away at it need the oxygen to breathe. So our average was 6.889 milligrams per liter, which is a very good number. Because the Connecticut standard is anywhere above 5. And then a healthy level would be somewhere between 6.5 and 8. So again, 6.889 milligrams per liter. We're very good. In Norwalk, the average there was 12.139, so very high. But ours are looking mostly good, except for a couple low areas in Bristow 2, 3, and 4. Bristow 6, also the first 2 days, they're a little low, but it's relatively acceptable. So this actually kind of makes sense because when you have the summer months and the warmer water, that usually helps hold on to more dissolved oxygen, whereas the cold water later on, the values usually get a little bit lower. So yeah, you can go to the next. Okay, yeah. Okay, so another thing that we measured for was the total phosphorus, and this one was we collected the water samples and then we sent them off to the analytical lab. Was there a question? No. Okay. Phosphorus is an element that's found in the water, and just like nitrogen, it's common in fertilizers, both artificial and organic, because it's an essential nutrient for plant growth, and it's just a byproduct of like organic waste such as manure and stuff like that. So phosphates are one of the things that was kind of included in the total phosphorus, and these are chemicals that contain the element phosphorus, and they're very important to water quality because too much can cause an excessive growth of algae, which will raise the DO levels to levels that are uncomfortable for fish, and can also cause algal blooms, which will make the water toxic to both people, aquatic life, and animals. So the natural levels are usually under 0.03 milligrams per liter, and in 1986, the EPA said that if there's a stream that doesn't empty into a reservoir, it shouldn't be more than 0.1. So as you can see, most of our data falls below that standard of 0.1, so it's looking pretty good. And then our average was 0.118 milligrams per liter, but that's because we kind of have that big outlier at Bristow 6. Whereas in Bristow 1, in the kind of middle days, which were, I believe, in August, and Bristow 3 as well, those first couple of days, those are pretty high above the recommended levels. So as you can see, 3, 4, and 6 were most consistently too high. So this is probably just because of the runoff in the water from different kind of fertilizer in the soil.
So just to conclude, the sites we should probably be paying attention to are sites 2, which are near the condos, and site 3, which is beneath the baseball fields, site 4, which is next to the bridge inside Bristow, and then site 6, which is on Old Stamford Road. And one trend we noticed is that anytime there was a spike or a high point in some of the levels, it dissipated into the next few sites. So, and if there's anything you want to add, Clara?
Yeah, so I guess the question we would ask you is, if we know of potentially like any treatments or any fertilizers that might be possibly like causing these like spikes near potentially the baseball fields or perhaps near the houses near sites 2 and 6. But if not, otherwise, if we want to continue testing, these would be just some sites just to keep looking at.
So does this indicate that there might be some chemicals used in the base to maintain the baseball fields that is affecting Bristow, in the bridge in South Bristow, that site?
It's possible. If there are chemicals, then that would make just some of these spikes in data make a little bit more sense. So yeah, that I think is something to potentially look into.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to be? We are very concerned about about Bristow and keeping that as ecologically sound as possibly can. Is there anything else? And I did see that it seemed to be affecting 3, 4, and 6, which is Bristow Sanctuary. Is there anything else other than looking at the baseball fields that we need to think about?
Well, I think possibly maybe looking at some sources near sites 1 and 2, because as Ty said, when there was like a big spike in site 2, then that kind of traveled throughout the other sites.
Traveled into 3 and 4. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's great. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything that do you foresee any next steps for your team in this regard?
Well, my team is, we're always open to working with you. I think we're kind of going to put the ball more in your court to see like if this with this data, if you guys want us to continue testing or whatever you guys think will be best.
That would be great. That would be great. We'll be in touch with you then to talk about how we can continue this partnership.
Yeah, that's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Just to add, I don't know if this is useful at all for Tiger or for others in other town departments, but all of their samples were processed like was mentioned by York Analytical Lab, which is a state certified lab, and so these data should be broadly useful. Like this isn't like a cute little high school student project. They did very legitimate science, and so I would stand these data up next to any. So I just wanted to sort of make a plug for that. I think that the team did a really excellent job working on this. I think it's just kudos to all of you for a job well done.
Likewise, I'd like to share my compliments to the team for what they've done. And I think Linda spoke correctly and said, we want to think about the implications of what's happening upstream to Bristow and see if there isn't some kind of modification or steps we can take to reduce the phosphate and nitrogen loading that's coming through. So it's a great start. It's always great to have hard data to talk to and then to try and interpret and then see if we can use it for some action implications. So thank you all for a great effort here.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, we all have really enjoyed doing this project. So yeah, it's been really great.
Much applause.
Thank you. Thank you all. I don't know whether Susan's on. It looks like I have to run out now. So I'm going to see if, and I'm not quite sure. I just lost my power too on my PC.
Oh dear. Well, I do see that Susan is on, so maybe she can take over now.
Okay.
Need
Hey,
to go.
thank you guys very much. So sorry, I've got to run off.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad you were
Thank you.
to the presentations. Susan,
Hello?
would you like to take over now?
No, because I have very interrupted service here.
I
You
do
keep
too.
going.
I do too. I mean, it's almost worthless for me, but I'm being listening to, but I suggest we start thinking about going back and in-person meetings. We find people all over in the libraries, in the schools, in the restaurants and all, in the stores. So people are circulating, and I think we ought to consider getting.
Right. Hello? So
It's in and
well,
out. Hearing.
I will, I know, I noticed that Robin had to go, but Tiger, are you still on? Let's see, Tiger's still here. Can you address the food scraps program? I know Robin's not on anymore and Tiger is.
Right, it's still, well, we're still viable. It's still working quite well. We took in, we added in a couple of different canisters to take in carved pumpkins and painted
I don't
pumpkins.
know if
and then
anybody's here, but it's all dead space for me.
And then Robin mentioned that she had taken a whole bunch of trailer loads of pumpkins up to Skip Hobbs's farm in Massachusetts, which I thought was fantastic. So we're
Yes.
still working towards it. That, you know, the numbers have dropped slightly, but that's not any concern at present. And we'll continue to monitor and see how it goes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I know they fed the cows.
Yes, yeah, the pictures were pretty cool.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you. The solar power installations, we'll review of that next month.
I
Anything,
can tell you on that, we are looking at a couple of different locations. We just signed a proposal, the first selectman signed a proposal to look at the playhouse to generate power for the town hall annex, and then possibly putting it on the parks garage that's adjacent to Saks School. That's in conjunction with the work that's going to be going on at the high school. There's quite a large solar installation going to be going on there. So, and then we'll be looking at taking some of that power to draw down the power fed to the Dunning Field Stadium lights.
oh, great.
So those will be coming. The high school will be going online a lot quicker, and then this proposal for other locations will be soliciting and hopefully getting some good numbers back shortly.
Great, great. So we'll hear more about that in January then.
Yeah.
The transfer station, any news anyone can share? The master plan, I think you probably would know, Tiger. Again, Robin's not here.
I have an engineering firm helping us look at locations for our salt dome, salt shed on the property. And then I've got another engineering firm taking a look at the transfer station itself, not the station, but the incinerator buildings to see what we can do with those structures that are still on the site. And at that point in time, once we gather that information, we can kind of move forward with a little bit of an idea and what else we could do at the transfer station. I know I have we're trying to put together a meeting together with Rob and myself, Katie Owsley, and a couple of others for resurrecting the swap shop now that COVID is, it's not passed, but people are willing to gather a little bit more frequently. So we're looking at trying to see if we can't install that for possibly a spring install for the swap shop itself. But we're just trying to meld our schedules together to get one meeting date so we can meet and start the process again.
Okay, great. So there is a possibility that the swap shop will be active in the spring of
I
2020.
can't say, that it's going to be based upon volunteers and then whether or not I can actually,
Yeah.
create the area, but we are looking at, I would like to see it come up in the spring. Yes.
Yeah.
Just, I can't say it's a definite, but it hasn't gone away. The idea is still very much alive.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Tiger. I think the next item is the budget, which was set at 24,000. I think that's just worth mentioning here. The tax mailer insert is done. The next item, which is the green link, is the question mark about the runners event, the Conservation Commission sponsorship. I don't know if Chris meant that we should discuss whether or not we should do that, but I think we'll wait and maybe do that offline and talk about that in January. Going on to Bristow Bird, capital plan spending. I think that's pretty self-explanatory here. We've certainly made a lot of progress. The fernery has been installed, and I look forward to seeing that in the spring. The crossing pavilion was funded. We did have the moving on the bench for Jim St. Clair. That's great. And then there was a discussion where we tabled replacing St. Francis statue. I guess that was discussed last month. So I think basically, unless there's anything that anybody wants to just on the remaining agenda items, we should adjourn this meeting. I do think it's worth noting that there was light a third of the allocation of public space sustainability from the American Rescue Plan. So does anybody have comments?
Well, I don't know if anybody hears me, but I had said earlier, I'd like to consider having the meetings in person.
All right, well, we'll put that on the agenda for January, and perhaps we'll discuss it, and perhaps we can have a January meeting. I think that's up to the town to decide when we start having meetings.
Well, the reason I mention that also is the fact that I'm not hearing everything here and I don't see everything. It's interrupted constantly. It's almost, I'm just sitting in as a courtesy because I'm really not getting a lot of this meeting.
That's unfortunate. Sorry, Marty. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Susan? Well, I second it. This meeting is adjourned as of 7:22.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I found this on the web. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sarah. Thank you, Clara. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.